The Bible says, let your yes be yes and your no be no, but there's few politicians out there that actually do that. Well, we don't have a politician today. We have a gentleman who is a true statesman. That, of course, is Senator Bob Hall. Here for some straight talk, Rockwall County. I'm Bunker Bob Steinhagen, and this is The Bunker Bob Show. And welcome back to another great edition of the Bunker Bob Show. And today is an individual that, if you've seen my last show, is considered to be in the Bunker Bob Hall of Fame, Conservative Hall of Fame, and that's because Senator Hall is no politician. He is an individual who epitomizes what I consider to be what Sam Houston, if you ever go to the San Jacinto Battleground, you will be able to see Sam Houston's dictionary there, and in that dictionary is one word crossed out. That word is compromise. And if there's anyone who is an uncompromising conservative, that, of course, would be State Senator Bob Hall. Senator Hall, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Bob, for having me, and thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that very much.
Well, if you know anything about this show, I don't hand out compliments like that unless they're absolutely true. And so I really, I highlighted that there were three patriots here in Texas that I consider to be uncompromising conservatives: Ted Cruz, Alan West, and Bob Hall. And so you really, what I like most about you is something that a member of the state legislature told me in confidence meant as an insult. And what that individual said was that Bob Hall isn't someone that you can really work with. He's one of those people that you don't really consider too much. And I told that guy, I said, well, that's exactly what the people of Rockwall want. They want an uncompromising conservative.
Well, I would have to agree with you, because that's what I am, and that's what I'll be. And if the people of Rockwall decide they want someone who waffles and flip-flops on issues or moves to the left just to tickle the people's ear with what they want to hear, then they can find somebody else to do this job. This is not the job that defines me. I'm defined by my relationship with my Lord Jesus Christ and my service to him and my family. And I do this in third place, but I do it as I said I was going to do it. I'm a constitutional conservative with Judeo-Christian values, and that's how I view the world, and that's what I ran on. And so when people have moved to the left of me and decide they want an AOC or a Pelosi type of person, which I don't think will happen here in Texas, but they're welcome to them. I mean, if that's what they want. But as far as I'm there, I will continue to come down on the conservative side of issue, because the purpose of government is to protect the people, not to provide free stuff.
Well, it's interesting. Joe Biden used the word protect as a way to kind of give people ready for another set of government restrictions, but that's not the kind of protection that you're talking about, is it?
No. I mean, that's one of the things that people in this political world will take and misuse words and misuse titles, and that's why we find some bills that quite often have a title that just pulls at your heartstrings, and you think is the most wonderful thing since buttons on a shirt, but it turns out to be absolutely horrible. And a good example I like to use is, how could you ever argue with the Affordable Care Act, the title of it?
Exactly.
Content. And the same thing with protection. All of this was done to us in the last year was done under the guise of protecting us after instilling a level of fear that has not been instilled in the American people since probably the 1940s.
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And we're talking obviously about the COVID pandemic. I thought it was interesting that President Biden didn't even use the word COVID in his speech to the nation, but he was talking about it nonetheless. And What I think is most impressive to the people of Texas, and I think what we're most grateful about, Senator, is the fact that you have kind of taken the lead in this whole COVID issue. And so I want to talk a little bit about the testimony that Dr. Peter McCullough came before the committee with, and it's someone that you've been working with for a while, as I understand. And he really said some things that I think, I guess I'd say it this way. I learned a lot in listening to his testimony. And one of the fundamental things that he talked about was the fact that this pandemic, he's of the opinion that we've been kind of moving away from our focus, where our focus should be, and that is on treating people who are sick. And instead, we've kind of been focusing on getting a vaccine. And those people who are sick have really have lost their lives. Now, I'm gonna play a clip from that so that viewers can see. He talks a little bit about patients that he's seen and who have needed treatment, and kind of his philosophy about that. So,
patients with heart and lung disease who needed urgent treatment. And I refused to let an illness, which lasted for 2 weeks at home before they got sick enough to be hospitalized, I refused to let a patient languish at home with no treatment and then be hospitalized when it was too late. It was obvious. That was obvious in April that was the case.
Yeah, and most of the doctors in Texas, everywhere, basically, if you get diagnosed with COVID, they basically tell you they send you home and tell you if it gets really bad, then go to the hospital. But as he said, that's kind of too late, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And it's a thing that I've been railing against since early on when I met with Dr. McCullough over the internet and with about 30 other doctors, most of them here in Texas, but some as far away as California and Georgia. And all of them were very consistent in what they had to say, in that they were blown away by the philosophy that was coming out of the government and out of the hierarchy of the medical field in the terms of FDA and CDC and the WHO, in that they were totally ignoring any sort of treatment to the symptoms of what people got as a result of the COVID. There's people such as blood clots, inflammation, infections in the lungs, and others that we've treated for forever. And they were just appalled that the efforts were specifically to guide doctors away from early treatment and only operate defensively, putting them in the hospital where all they were getting were a warm bed to lay in, a respirator when they need it, then put on a ventilator, and then 80% of them being hauled away from the hospital in a hearse. When this is something, if like it's the only disease that they said that we've ever had that they didn't say early treatment is what you have to do. I mean, can you imagine a woman going into the doctor and discovering she has stage 1 breast cancer, and the doctor says, well, it's just stage 1. Go home and wait till it gets to stage 4 and come back and we'll do something about it. I think it absolutely reprehensible. I think the Texas Medical Board should be investigating every doctor out there that refused to treat patients with the therapeutics that were being demonstrated that were effective on the symptoms, that refused to treat. I think they should be investigated for medical malpractice. Matter of fact, I've been recommending to people, if their doctor won't treat them, they should turn them into the Texas Medical Board for malpractice. That's
good advice. It really is. And one of the things that Dr. McCullough suggested is a new law. And here's what he said about that new law.
So what can be done right here, right now? There's going to be more people that die in Texas, and it's an absolute tragedy. How about tomorrow? Let's have a law that says there's not a single result given out without a treatment guide and without a hotline of how to get into research. Let's put a staffer on this and find out all the research available in Texas, and let's not have a single person go home with a test result with their fatal diagnosis, sitting at home, going into 2 weeks of despair before they succumb to hospitalization and death.
Yeah, this is something totally different from what we're hearing from most doctors.
Oh, absolutely. And to that end, a few weeks back, I've been working with the doctors who belong to AAPS, Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, great medical organization, and they put together a flyer that listed preventative treatment and early home treatment for low risk and high risk patients. Very, very clear, simple treatments that are reflective of what doctors have been doing all over the state and the country, in the use of things, highly sophisticated drugs like vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and then talked about hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, which they can get from a doctor. But that is something that we published and put out here recently to folks. Matter of fact, I sent. I'll tell you, the senators here have a little kind of tradition that they do when session starts, and they send a little gift around to each of the other senators. I'll get a coffee cup from one district, a bag of grapefruit from another. Well, this time I put together what I call a COVID combat kit, and in that was with Terrytown Pharmacy here in Austin, and got them to provide me with bottles of D3, zinc, vitamin C, and quercetin, and I put those in a bag along with the flyer that they had put together, and gave that to each of the senators along with a note to them. I also sent one to the governor, lieutenant governor, and then after that, I sent it to the entire Texas Medical Board and the Texas Pharmacy Board. And between that and my conversations with the doctors, we decided to file a bill that big emphasis has been on testing. You got to test. Well, you got what you heard Dr. McCullough say. Yep, yes, sirree. You tested positive. Go home and die. Is basically all we've done. Just yep, you're tested. Don't get near anybody. Go home and lock yourself in and wait to die. No answer to what to do. And so our bill is going to require that any time a test is given, whether the person tests positive or not, or negative in it, that they will be given a guide, information relative to what they can do by themselves, because this is over the counter. This information includes information also that says go see you talk to your doctor for more. But here's knowing what to go see the doctor about, to give people some idea. And we're also going to require them to include information relative to vaccine that includes not just the benefit but the risk of taking the vaccine.
We haven't heard much about that in the news, and so it's shocking that the press doesn't find this to be newsworthy.
It is shocking, but it is not surprising,
right?
Because every effort has been all along. This is the doctors who really understand what's going on here. They will tell you this is not a disease that needed a vaccine. You get a vaccine for things like polio, in which they can find no medical treatment for it. This thing has had medical treatment that was effective. I mean, first of all, the survival rate is 99.98%. Think about that, 99.98% survival rate. That is extremely high. But the problem we've got is that they started it off with a whole pack of lies about the COVID virus.
Well, and I also just let me break in. One of the things that he said was, and I hadn't thought about it until he said it, was that we've heard from one voice, one so-called expert throughout this entire pandemic. That's been Fauci, and all of the other doctors who are actually studying this and researching have been muted.
Oh, absolutely. And you got to remember, Dr. Fauci has the title doctor, but he hasn't been in a clinic almost in his lifetime. He has been a bureaucrat.
Yep.
It's just like what we have here at the state. We have bureaucrats that are running it that have a title of doctor, and they probably were in a clinic 10, 12, 15 years ago, but they have no recent clinical experience, and their allegiance is to the politics of it not to the health of the people of Texas. And that's been reflected in the actions and the advice that's come out of the people who have the title doctor, is protecting the politics of it. And the politics have been to get the vaccine out there, no matter how damaging it is to the people. The reports I've seen, and I don't have the exact numbers, but the adverse reactions and the deaths, any other vaccine would have been stopped by now.
Well, let me, and so going along with that, let me play the last clip from him, which I think is another very telling point that you never hear in the press today.
So my testimony as I sit here today is COVID-19 has always been a treatable illness. A very large study from McKinney, Texas, another one from New York City, show that when doctors treat patients early who are over age 50 with medical problems with a sequenced multi-drug approach with the available drugs, 4 to 6 drugs that are available to them, now the monoclonal antibodies are better, there's an 85% reduction in hospitalizations and death. 85%. 85%. I want you to remember that number, 85%. We have over 500,000 deaths in the United States. Preventable fraction could have been as high as 85% if our pandemic response would have been laser focused on the problem, the sick patient right in front of us. We were focused over here and focused over there and focused on masks and what have you. Laser focus, sick patient, treat them. We lost focus on the most fundamental thing.
Yeah, that's just a profound thing. And thinking about how many lives could have been saved had we not listened to the hysteria that was politically driven, as you're saying.
Oh, absolutely. What he's saying is what I did, presented in one of the videos I did back in May of last year, when I showed the data, international data from several countries around the world. And
I remember that, by the way. I watched that live show.
Yeah, that particular video had over 1 million views to it, but it showed the data that the countries that were using hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, and mostly at that time it was hydroxychloroquine, their death rate was 5 to 10% of what it was here in the United States. It was the same data the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons used in their lawsuit, was confirmed it, supported it. We had countries like Honduras and Costa Rica and India that were actually going door to door, passing out hydroxychloroquine, zinc, C and D to their folks. You know, a package is probably cost $20, and their survival rate was fantastic. But we were here on a course that was intended to take us to the vaccine that was going to make a lot of money for the pharmaceutical companies.
And
here in Texas, we had one of the doctor advisors who really came out. He was part of the pharmaceutical business, yet he was advising on this that led to the lockdowns, the mask, and all of the other nonsensical idiot things that we did.
I'll tell you, there were a lot of things that McCullough said that, I almost fell out of my chair. He asked a lot of really good questions. One of the questions he asked is how many of you have seen anything in the press about what other countries are doing to treat this? And he would ask question after question, and you go, it would seem that would be a logical thing to see on the news every night about these things. But he's absolutely right. We've never focused on the treatment, just the so-called cure.
No. And that's been the key word that the Texas Medical Board has pursued people as using the word cure. So we've tried to stay away from that, treating the symptoms. If they don't get sick and die, it really shouldn't matter what you call what was done to them. They didn't get sick and die, which when you don't do anything to them, they get sick and die. And so I just applaud the doctors who have been courageous enough to stand up. And right now we still have this rogue Texas Medical Board that we have going after doctors who are using treatments to actually save lives. They could care less about the health of people or saving lives. All they want to do is play play politics.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things he also said that I was, again, fell out of my chair with was those who get, this is at the 12-minute mark. I don't have it, I'm unfortunately, but those who get COVID have, quote, complete and durable immunity. And that was something that, you know, I was not aware of. I thought that after 6 months you can get it again, and that just doesn't sound like that's based on science.
No, that was part of the lie they had to tell in order to, because COVID was spreading so fast, and people were not getting sick enough to die as the COVID was getting weaker, but they had to have that in their story in order to support. You have to get the vaccine. You have to be vaccinated. The only way you're possibly going to live to see your next birthday is if you get vaccinated. And so, I mean, the whole framework in which what we spent the last year has been built around a series of interlocking lies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One other thing that I took away from his testimony, and by the way, if I'll put a link to that testimony, it's 20 minutes long. It's well worth listening to. And at the beginning, he takes, I mean, I thought about playing it, but it would just take too long to talk about all of his credentials and why he has, why he's someone you should actually listen to. He and his wife both also had COVID. But one of the things that he talked about is that herd immunity is really the most effective way of stopping this, and that if you're under 50 without medical, additional medical conditions, it's really not advisable to get the vaccine, which is completely foreign to what I've been hearing up to now.
Well, it's not just it's foreign to it, but in the accelerated test that they did before turning this loose on the public, they did not test young people. They did not test anyone that had the COVID, and they did not test pregnant women. And now they have no clue, any idea what's going to be the long-term effect on women. Maybe they're not even pregnant now, but later they're still childbearing age, because all of those tests, and now they're giving them to young folks. And there's been no reason. I mean, there's been no reason we had our schools closed down. The kids up there under 15, early on, they pointed out when they really realized who was affected by this, that a child under 15 had 4 times greater chance of being killed by lightning on the school playground than they were by the COVID.
Ugh.
And yet we shut down our schools.
Wow.
And lost a year of education.
Wow. That's, I mean, it's shocking. It should be infuriating to every Texan who's listening to this. So I'm just glad that we have you fighting on the front line about this. And it's not. I'm not hyperbole aside. I mean, you are truly leading this in our legislature, and this is SD2. You represent Rockwall, and we've got a true champion fighting for us, as opposed to fighting to be reelected again, I guess, because some of the things that you have brought out have been very unpopular. But I thank you for staying the course on all of that, because this is obviously an important issue. I want to talk about a couple of other things. I know you have an education committee meeting to get to, and we had talked a little bit before we came on the air that you're on how many committees right now?
I think we got 6.
6 committees, yeah. So, I mean, the reason the committee looked a little bit scarce is because everyone is got multiple committees, but you're paying attention through your staff, that kind of thing, and which is really helping a lot. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about grid protection. So, you explained, first of all, you had a legislative priority meeting here in Rockwall. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there. I would have broadcast, but my wife and our family were heading to Crested Butte for a spring break. So I apologize for not being there, but I did get a chance to watch it. And you talked a lot about legislative priorities. One of the things that were important to the people of Rockwall, for sure, and the people of Texas. If it's important for Rockwall, I'll just say it's important to the people of Texas. But one of the things that you had talked about was how the grid worked, and you know, my family's from the oil and gas industry, so I've known oil and gas all my life. But what I haven't understood is how the electrical grids work, and that you can't just store up electricity and things like that. You have to kind of use it as you go along. So would you mind just kind of reiterating kind of what happened with that electrical grid, and what bills are moving through the House and Senate that are going to help prevent these rolling blackouts like we experienced just recently?
Okay, well, let me see if I can give you a brief kind of high level description of what happened for the particular incident this couple of weeks ago. Actually, the best way to describe it, it was the coming together of a perfect storm. And I don't mean that as a pun. I mean of a number of things going wrong all at the same time, which together were catastrophic. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the role of wind and solar. That it was caused by the windmills or caused by the solar panels. And I would say that's not necessarily true. What I can say about wind and solar is that they're highly unreliable. Matter of fact, they are so unreliable that neither one of them works much more than 50% of the time. Sun doesn't shine at night, so you don't have any solar, and the wind only blows every now and then, and sometimes really hard, and sometimes not even enough to turn the blades.
That's right.
And so we're at the total mercy of it. And if you get the solar panels covered with a layer of snow, it doesn't matter whether the sun's shining or not. And so they are extremely unreliable, but that's known and can be worked around. What we can say that was a major contributor to us getting to the point where we did not have adequate capacity to handle the demand is the philosophy behind wind and solar. The philosophy that of the environmental restrictions that has led to the closure of more than 100 coal-fired power plants in Texas. The policy behind it that prohibits our gas-fired plants from operating at max capacity because of environmental reasons.
And you're talking about federal regulations.
Federal laws. And it's the policy behind it that caused us to spend over the last several years over $19 billion to build CREZ lines and operate and subsidies going to wind and power, and continues to dump money at the rate of about $1.4 billion a year into it, all of which could have been used to upgrade our thermal power plants and make them more reliable, more resilient. And it's the theory behind it that gives an edge to wind and power so that they don't pay their fair share of cost to operate, and which amounts to using transmission lines for free, and then not having to pay when they bid to provide power and can't do it. All the other power plants have to buy it from somebody else to make up for their non-participation.
Wow.
And so they get all of these free rides that skews the market to the point that it makes it not an attractive investment for new gas-powered plants to be built. And so as plants have worn out or gotten old or been shut down and coal has gone away, we have in the last couple of years reduced our capacity. So we've been operating at a very thin margin of capacity to support the demand out there, and have eked our way through August for the last couple of years with probably 7% or less margin, which is really close. So when this incident came about, where we had all of a sudden a rapid drop in temperature and a rapid increase in demand, it taxed the system beyond what it could stand up to, in that some of these plants, what we understand the electrical components, the on and off of them tend to wear them out. Example.
Yeah, you gave an example of a light bulb, something I didn't know. If you left a light bulb on, it would probably burn forever. But it's the turning off and turning back on is what makes it fall or burn out.
Yeah, when you turn it on, it's a rapid rise in temperature because it's high temperature that makes it glow. And then when you turn it off real quick, it's a rapid decrease. Huh. And so that tends to wear things out. So when we had this rapid turn on to meet the demand that's out there, and you have to understand that electricity is not like water. You can't just, pile it up and put it in a bucket and use it whenever you need to. The way you have to match the generation with the demand. It's demand driven. That is, they estimate what they think people, because they have no control over people turning their lights on and off, turning their air conditioners on and off, turning machinery on and off. So they have to adjust the amount of power being provided to what's being demanded in it. And so when the demand for it got great, or when it first started, we had failures in power plants for various reasons. And so as they failed, we had less capacity. And the challenge is to always have to keep that supply balanced with the demand. And when that gets out of, when you can't keep that balance, you can actually shut down the entire grid system, burning up the equipment so that we would have been down for weeks or months. And so as the capacity dropped, they had to turn off or create the rolling brownouts, the blackouts, turn the power off because they had no way of controlling people except just don't give it to them. So they can't turn it on, so they could not exceed, because you could not have the demand exceeding your capability to produce.
And we came very close to doing that, is my understanding.
Yeah, well, we were within a few seconds because they got down to the level that they had never trained. This was another contributor. ERCOT had never trained for it. They'd never practiced for it. They didn't know whether the software would work or not at the levels where we had such low supply capability and the demand out there. And so it was a real balancing act that in the process of controlling it, the testimony they gave said they came within seconds a couple of times of losing the entire system.
Scary. But, so what are we doing? So what can we do to prevent it?
We're going to have to make some serious structural changes in the organization and of how ERCOT and the PUC operate with the power companies in the management of this. ERCOT's got to change some policies. They've got to make some software changes, and they have to have better training to handle emergency service. Something that having been in the military, I just do not understand any business operating such a critical operation that has not gone through extensive and recurring worst case scenario training, because that's what they're there for, not just when things are good and easy to operate, but when you have real challenges, and they need to do that. We need to look at changing how we have our financial structure so that we can have a system that will attract some new construction for thermal systems. And we have to bring into alignment and level the playing field for wind and solar. They can provide power, but they need to do so on a level playing field, to be treated just like a coal plant, a gas plant, nuclear plant, or any other plant out there.
Texas got national notoriety. The press wanted to try to make an issue of Texas basically having control of our own power grid, and as though that was a bad thing. So do you think that what is you guys are implementing in this legislative session will prevent what we experienced this just recently?
Yeah, I don't think there's any need to succumb to the big push to make us part of the national power grid system. I think that would just make our problem even worse.
Amen.
They have their problems. At least they have to put up with the federal government. The way we are, we have a lot less federal government meddling with our system than what the other states do. And I think we would be well to make sure we do what we need to do so we keep the federal government out of it. as much as possible. That is not a solution. That will give us more problems than it could ever possibly solve.
And I think a good example of that is another topic I wanted to talk about was border security. That Texas, okay, again, something I learned that I didn't know, but learned from you. Texas does not, the feds secure our border, and we have no stake in that. And what I mean by that is we are not. If the feds are not doing their jobs, we can't go in and take over. And so you're addressing that in this legislative session. Am I correct?
Yes, I am. You just stated immigration is a federal issue, whether it's legal immigration or illegal aliens coming in. That is a federal government. We have no authority to do anything other than detain people and then hand them over to ICE. And if there's nobody to hand them over to, you get what we currently have now, and I think the number is up to over 4,000 young people that have come in here that we don't know what to do with them. We put about 3,000 down in the convention center in Dallas, out in West Texas near Amarillo. There's a oil camp out there that they found that they're going to put about 1,000, and I don't know where they're going to put the rest of them. But it's a major problem. Even when we put our National Guard down there, they can only be there in an assist role to the Border Patrol and to ICE.
So how do we overcome that?
Okay, the bill I have filed is one we had previously filed when I first got here, when we had Obama giving us the same grief with not protecting our border that we're now getting from Biden, and that is an interstate compact. It's a tool that's been around since the Constitution was written that allows states to go together and assume a role of responsibility over federal authority for certain things. They're not unusual. We're probably involved in dozens of them with other states on other issues, and so it's something that would take at least one other state. And I wouldn't think we'd have a hard time getting something like Arizona or a real conservative state like Oklahoma to join with us in it. We're working on it. We're to get more of the specifics, but it is an interstate compact that would allow us to take action. Now, the people who are posing a question say, well, that's a federal government issue. We don't want to spend Texas money for it. My answer to that is, that open border is costing us a fortune.
A lot of money.
Fortune.
Yep.
Some people estimate as much as $12 billion a year for that open border. So we don't have a choice in the money being spent. What we ought to have our choice is how we spend it. Do we want to spend it trying to lock people up and clean up after the problems that are created by the drug cartels and thugs and human traffickers that come over, and not to mention the human suffering that is part of this open border situation? Spend it there, or do we stop it? And we stop it with something like the compact and taking the initiative to finish building the wall. Well, which needs to be done.
Well, and obviously there's a lot of Biden voters coming over they're actually wearing the Biden T-shirts.
I was gonna say they must be. They're wearing this T-shirt.
Yeah. So okay. So, my last show, I focused on the fact that America is moving back into bondage. We, quoting Lord Wolhalsey, who goes through the systematic approach of what history has taught us about Democrat republics in the past, that they go from faith, from bondage to freedom to liberty, back into bondage, because people are so enamored with having government take care of themselves. And so it really brings up the final point that I'd like to talk about, which is election integrity. And when we elect people, and I always say we deserve the government that we elect, when we elect people who are going to be Santa Claus, as Rush Limbaugh would like to say, and we open our borders to people who are going to basically turn the key for Biden or whatever Democrat is at the top of the ticket, because they're going to give them everything that they wanted. election integrity becomes so much more important in this last election. I think a lot of us, you probably maybe one of those as well, we felt like we got cheated in this last election, and had a lot to do with the fact of that election integrity was in question. I'm not a big fan of early voting. In fact, and by the way, I proposed 32 platform positions for the Republican Party. 3 of them are legislative priorities, and including the pro-life, the gun-free zone that you're dealing with for schools. But the election integrity, one of my platform position was to get rid of early voting. Now, you've got more of a compromise to that, which is basically an election period rather than election voting, so that there's no gap in between there. But even with that, how much faith do you have in the election system, and do you think that when we go to the polls, that what happens at the polls, that there's integrity there, and especially since people don't have to have an ID when they go to the polls? I know that I've asked a bunch of issues, but I mean, I'm kind of at a point where I just kind of throw up my hands and say, how do we deal with this?
Well, there is a lot there. And first I'll say, for those people who think that we do not have an issue of election security, I will say that we have incredible, ample evidence that there is. The problem is we don't have evidence that is durable or would stand up in a court. And it's probably because of the way things operate, that you can't take pictures, you can't take notes, you can't take videos.
Yes.
There's no way to gather the data. And with the electronic voting, those ones and zeros in those machines, they have no idea who they are or where they're going and where they came from. And we can never, I would say right now, I've said this many a time, that where electronic voting has been involved, you could not go back and actually prove that anybody who was elected to office was a result of the will of the people. It was just the results of what was shown on the last printout that was made. And so that's what we have to change, is having a system that is transparent and accountable. And I could spend far more time than you have right now, I'm sure, talking about all the things that need to be done. But let me just try to give you my highlights of them. One of them is we've got 254 counties in Texas, and we have 254 election processes. Every county gets to do it however they want to do it, with very few restrictions or oversight on whether they're even doing what they're supposed to be doing. And in what few state level regulations we have a rogue elections office in the Secretary of State's office that likes to issue waivers that just make mistakes and fraud easier to do. And so we've got a lot of basic rule changing that has to take place to create an election process that's uniform throughout the state. We have got to have, for voting itself, what you mentioned is an election period. Right now we have three. We have early voting, we have mail-in ballots, and we have election day. 3 different ones. We need only 2. Mail-in ballots need to be limited to people that are out of the county or will be out of the county anytime, whether through the election period, or they are disabled and unable to go. We need to eliminate the age issue. Age should not be an issue. That has nothing to do with anything.
Good.
And so get rid of age. So we just have those 2, and then other things in terms of signature verification and ballots only being sent upon being requested, and make it a felony to misrepresent their status of either being out of the county or their disability. Make it a felony to otherwise say. That's one of the big shortcomings we have with election laws, is that you can break them, but there's no penalty for doing it. It's just not legal. And so that needs to change. For
That's
the
true.
election period time frame, yes, we proposed and I'm not really hung up on whether it's 5 days, 10 days, or 14 days. That is not so much important as the eliminating the 4-day gap between early election and election day, because that's the place where a significant amount of the voter fraud and errors take place, is people messing with the results of early voting before they have to report them after the close of the polls on election night. And so if we require the equipment to be in place on the opening day of voting, and at that location you have to run what is called a zero tape. That is a tape that proves that the machine has no preloaded votes in it. That gets signed by the judge and deputy at the site and any poll watchers. And then at the end of after the night of election day, that machine cannot move once it's put in place. It stays there. And the last thing is done when the polls close is you run what's called a tally tape. That is a tape that prints out what the vote results are that are in that machine at the precinct immediately after the polls close. So nobody has any time to mess with it. By doing that, we provide a hard copy confirmation of what happened at that precinct.
But that would be contingent upon all of the voting locations in Texas using the same system. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's we're pushing for, going to the same system, and that is there are machines out. So one of the things we've done over the last years that has weakened our security has been moving with technology. The electronic voting machines that we use today were initially developed as the DRE was as to make it a little easier to get people that show up at the curbside handicapped to be able to vote. Well, some people are saying, oh, that technology is wonderful. Let's take that in and make that a voting machine. Well, that was one of the biggest mistakes we ever made, is doing that. We could go back to hand-marked paper ballots that are optically read right there as soon as you mark it, and greatly increase our security. And we're putting together a plan for it to try to include that in one of our bills. But it would significantly increase our security by being able to track very clearly what intent people intended. Because once you can't track from the time somebody uses their finger to touch the screen until a document is actually counted, whether or not that was what the voter's intent was.
Well, and respectfully so. I mean, even with all of that, Senator, I mean, the fact that you don't have to have an identification even if all of those things were in place, you can vote early and vote often, as they used to say in Louisiana during the Huey Long days. But this is, I think, the biggest challenge for us, because we have so many people moving in from California, the left coast, and of course over the border, and they are beholden to the Democrat Party. They may or may not be citizens, and they may or may not decide to vote a couple, 3 times. What's to stop that?
No, well, we are going to have a problem. Part of the problem is we have federal law that we have to follow. And so we're kind of boxed in on some of the identification. That will always remain an issue. I don't see, until we get some changes made at the federal level, we'll be able to solve that particular problem. The thing is that while it's wrong and we can't have it, it is fairly small numbers compared to what the real threat is, and that is people manipulating the votes after they're cast to be like what Stalin said: I don't care who votes, I don't care how many times they vote, I just care about who counts.
That's right.
Counting the votes. And that's what we have to solve. There's some of this, and Bob, we're never going to have 100% secure system, not as long as we have men and women in charge, because as we know, God has said the heart of man is basically evil. That's how we got to where we are, that no matter what system we have, we will have evil people trying to cheat the system. We just have to make it difficult for them to do it.
Well, amen to that. And Well, we've talked about a lot, and I appreciate your time. I know you have to get back to a committee meeting, but I hope that you'll come back and give us another update because these are important issues. And I miss Rush Limbaugh and his optimism. What we lost when we lost Rush was enormous. And it's everything I can do to stay optimistic. But my hope, just like yours, is not in man; it's in Christ Jesus. And so, for us and for many Texans, that's where our hope lies. Even if we lose our liberty, we still know the end of the story as it goes. But I appreciate what you're doing in the state legislature. I really do, and I pray for you. I hope that the people of Rockwall will be praying for you. And please, is there anything? I'll give you the last word. Is there anything that you would like to see the people who are watching in Rockwall do? Is there something we need to? Do we need to call? Do we need to write letters? Is there what can we do to support what you're doing in Austin?
All of the above, and the main thing is, our government only works for righteous people, and it is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that's not just a cute statement. It is real. We get what you said. We
deserve the government that we elect.
What you elect.
Yes.
And government is run by those who show up and pay attention. And we have just got way too much apathy out there with people who just don't want to take the time to get involved. And people need to get involved. They need to pay more attention, particularly when you elect somebody. It's a sad thing for those folks that the day before they head to the polls to elect, they pick up the phone to call a trusted friend to say, who should I vote for? I find that, they should be calling people and tell them, listen, this is what I've done, and I've checked this guy out or this woman out, and this is what I think about them. Or when they're being reelected, listen, they said thus and so and thus and so and thus and so, but let me tell you what I've found from checking out what they did when they got to Austin or Washington or even to the county courthouse. This is what they've done. That's not what they said they were going to do. We need to change them out and vote for somebody different. It's paying attention, get involved out there. We're blessed. Last weekend when I was there in Rockwall, I saw a host of people running for the school board that just blew me away. Some really quality people who are running for the right reason, and that is they want to make for better education for our kids. We've got people running for city council, and there are going to be people running for county commissioner who want government to be serving the people, and that's what we need more people of. Getting involved, paying attention.
Amen.
As far as where to go or what to do, I'd say if you're not on our Facebook page, join it. We put out I think you would agree, Bob.
Outstanding.
We put out some pretty good fact information that's very informative, very little fluff. No, hardly. I don't like fluff, but it's around the issues on a regular basis, very informative. Our COVID series, we got over 3 million people reached with our COVID series out there. Facebook page. It's just Senator Bob Hall. And go and or sign up on our website, senatorbobhall.com, where we post our Capitol Hall report.
And I'll make sure that we put a link to that in this show as well. Because and do you have a MeWe page yet?
We're working on it.
Okay, good. Well, I agree 100%. And one of the things that if you're not aware, we will be having another candidate forum coming up with all of the candidates we've already scheduled most of the RISD candidates to come in a forum to answer questions. They have as much time as they want to answer each question. They are given the questions in advance, so it's not a gotcha opportunity. It's a time for them to put their best foot forward and answer some tough questions. And we're doing that for all the city council races as well. So if you are if you are not subscribed to this channel, make sure that you do, and you'll be notified. Hit the notification bell about when the next show is coming up, and then you'll be notified. So I hope that today has been helpful for you. I know it has for me and so many people. Senator Hall has done an amazing job in our state legislature. He's is one of those few guys that goes and does what he actually says he's going to do. Now, that is something that deserves our attention and our respect. So please do sign up on his Facebook. When he gets me, we get on there too, Parler, what have you, and support our great senator, because we are very well represented here in the great Rockwall County. So until next time, I look forward to seeing you, and don't forget to hit that notification bell and hit the subscription page. So we hope to see you next time. Have a blessed day. Until next time, I'm Bunker Bob. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.